It happens again. 3:07 a.m. The room is dark, still and heavy, except for the slow creak of the bed frame as a man pushes himself upright. His name doesn't matter. He could be anyone. A father, a husband, a man who's worked hard his whole life and just wants one full night of sleep. He blinks at the dim red glow of the clock, sighs, and shuffles toward the bathroom. The floorboards cool beneath his feet. His body feels heavier than it should. He's lost count of how many times he's done this tonight. 3, maybe 4. Each trip chips away at his rest, his patience, his strength. He used to laugh it off. Getting older, he'd say, forcing a smile. But deep down, something didn't feel right. This wasn't just age. It was something his body was trying to tell him, and for years, he hadn't listened. As he washes his hands, he looks in the mirror. The man staring back at him looks tired, not just from the night, but from the quiet frustration of feeling his body slow down, one habit, one ache, one interrupted sleep at a time. The voice inside him whispers, "Why can't I sleep through the night anymore?" And somewhere, beneath that question, a more unsettling one lurks. What if it's something I'm eating? Because here's the shocking truth. Sometimes what we think is healthy isn't hidden among the snacks we trust most, the handfuls we eat while watching TV, or sprinkle on our salads. Lie silent culprits that can fuel prostate inflammation, swell tissues, and press against the bladder just enough to wake us again and again. 4. Everyday nuts, each praised for heart health, and good fats could actually be quietly worsening his nights. It's not the coffee, it's not the water, it's not just getting older. It might be the very foods he thought were helping him. He crawls back into bed, staring at the ceiling. His wife sleeps peacefully beside him, undisturbed. And he wonders, what if the problem isn't his body, but what he's been feeding it? Because tomorrow morning, when he learns the truth, he'll never look at his favorite snack the same way again. And the worst part? One of them might be sitting in your kitchen right now. He always believed he was doing the right thing. A handful of nuts with his morning coffee, a healthy habit, something all the doctors said was good for the heart, good for energy, good for longevity. They called them superfoods, full of protein, packed with good fats, a natural way to stay strong after 50. But what no one told him is that inside that same bowl of health might live the very thing keeping him awake every single night. Because sometimes, the body's enemy hides behind the label of wellness. It starts small, a little irritation, a bit of bloating, a weaker flow. Then week after week, the nights become restless. Sleep feels shallow, and the quiet trips to the bathroom grow more frequent. What's happening inside isn't random. It's chemical. It's biological. It's betrayal. By the very foods that were supposed to help him. Deep inside the male body, the prostate, a walnut-sized gland just beneath the bladder, is quietly reacting. When certain fats and compounds from these so-called healthy nuts flood the system, they can spike inflammation and throw off hormonal balance. That's when DHT, dihydrotestosterone, begins to rise. It's a potent derivative of testosterone, but in excess, it acts like gasoline on a small flame. The flame is inflammation, and together, they turn the prostate from a quiet helper into a swollen, restless knot of pressure. The bladder feels it first. It becomes jumpy, overactive, sending urgent signals to empty, even when it's barely half full. That's why the nights become interrupted. Not because of age, not because of stress, but because a tiny gland is being pressed, squeezed, and inflamed from the inside out. Doctors call it benign prostatic hyperplasia, or BPH. Men call it frustration, fatigue, and sleeplessness. And here's the cruel twist. These villain nuts are the ones everyone eats without a second thought. They sit in jars on kitchen counters, hidden in trail mixes, offered as snacks at work or during long drives. He trusted them. Millions of men did, until a quiet wave of research began surfacing in men's health circles. A handful of scientists noticed something strange. Certain nuts, depending on their specific oils and hormone-like compounds, seem to trigger higher DHT levels and inflammation markers in men over 50. The results were subtle, but unmistakable. Men who consumed these specific nuts regularly were far more likely to report poor sleep, nighttime urination, and pelvic pressure. At first, it sounded impossible. How could something so natural, so harmless, cause that kind of disruption? But when the data spread, one study after another confirming the pattern, the story couldn't be ignored anymore. Forums lit up. Health podcasts buzzed. Doctors started whispering about it in waiting rooms. The truth had cracked open. Mom and men everywhere began questioning what they'd been putting in their bodies all along. Could the snacks they trusted be silently betraying them? Could the handful that symbolized discipline and self-care actually be the reason their nights were restless, their energy low, their confidence fading? It wasn't about fear, it was about awakening. Because once you know what to avoid, you can finally start to heal. But before we expose the 4 nuts that quietly destroy prostate balance, there's one more thing you need to understand. The reason these foods hit men over 50 harder than anyone else. And when you hear why, it'll change how you look at aging forever. He used to think nuts were the perfect snack. Small, easy, full of energy. But what he didn't know was that inside that innocent handful hid 4 silent saboteurs, the villain quartet. Each one disguised as health. Each one quietly stirring chaos where peace once lived. And it all starts with Anna, the salted deceiver. It's the one you find everywhere. In bars, airplane packets, lunchboxes. The everyman snack. The peanut. Harmless? Not quite. Peanuts are technically legumes, not true nuts. But here's the catch. They're often roasted in cheap oils rich in omega-6 fatty acids, the same kind that fan the flames of inflammation throughout your body. That salty crunch? It comes with a dose of sodium your prostate never asked for. High salt intake tightens blood vessels, slows circulation, and traps fluid in sensitive tissues. The prostate, already under pressure, begins to swell, quietly, persistently. And to make it worse, peanuts are one of the most common sources of aflatoxins, microscopic molds linked to inflammation and liver stress. For most people, the body fights it off. But for men over 50, whose systems are already balancing declining hormones and slower metabolism, that extra inflammation is enough to tip the scale. So while he thought he was snacking smart, his prostate was sounding the alarm. But the peanuts trick is mild compared to the next one, a nut that pretends to be heart-healthy, yet secretly feeds the very imbalance that drives prostate growth. 2. The omega imposter, the cashew. Smooth, buttery, satisfying. Marketed as the perfect plant-based protein. But here's the hidden cost. Cashews are loaded with omega-6 fatty acids, without the balancing omega-3s the body needs to control inflammation. It's like sending in soldiers without shields. Over time, that imbalance fuels chronic low-grade inflammation. And where does it often show up first? The prostate. Worse, cashews contain natural compounds called anacardic acids, mild irritants that can worsen inflammation for men sensitive to them. The result: tightness, swelling, and pressure that radiates from the lower belly down. And because cashews often come roasted and salted, the double hit of sodium and omega-6 turns them from healthy snack to hormonal sabotage. Many men don't connect the dots. They just notice their sleep getting lighter, their energy dipping lower, their nights growing longer. But the cashew's impact doesn't stop there. It sets the stage for something far more disruptive, because the next nut doesn't just inflame your prostate. It can actually trick your hormones themselves. The hidden hormone trigger, it's small, rich, elegant, the macadamia. The so-called luxury nut. And yet, its creamy taste hides a quiet hormonal twist. Macadamias are extremely high in palmitic acid, a saturated fat that, in moderation, isn't harmful. But in excess, studies show it may interfere with hormone signaling, including testosterone metabolism. When testosterone doesn't convert properly, DHT, the more potent form, begins to accumulate. And that's the spark. Too much DHT is the gasoline that drives prostate cells to expand, thicken, and press harder against the bladder. The result? The same 3 a.m. wake-ups, the same restless nights, the same quiet frustration that whispers, "You're just getting older." Macadamias wear the mask of elegance, but inside, they fan the fire of imbalance. Still, their hormonal influence pales next to the last one, the nut that does something far more dangerous. Because while the others inflame, this one deceives sweetly, silently, and in plain sight. The sweet-coated trap pistachios. The cheerful nut. Bright green, fun to crack open, often glazed, honey-roasted, or sugar-dusted, they seem harmless, even festive. But that sweet coat? It's a Trojan horse. Sugars and syrups trigger insulin spikes, which lead to inflammation and hormonal disruption. Insulin doesn't just manage blood sugar, it also affects testosterone balance. And when that balance shifts, your prostate feels it first. But even plain pistachios can be risky. They're among the nuts most likely to be contaminated by aflatoxins, and their high arginine content, while great for circulation in moderation, can overstimulate blood flow in inflamed tissues. That's like opening the floodgates when the dam's already cracking. What follows isn't just discomfort. It's that relentless pressure, the midnight urge, the restless cycle that steals sleep and calm. He used to think he was being healthy, snacking smarter, staying away from chips and candy. But now he realizes the truth. His healthy choices were fueling the very storm he was trying to escape. Each nut, in its own way, added fuel to the quiet fire in his body, the fire that kept him waking up night after night, never knowing why. But now that he knows the villains, he can finally learn the secret of the heroes. Because while 4 nuts quietly destroy prostate health, there are 4 others that can help rebuild it, cooling inflammation, balancing hormones, and restoring the peace his nights have been missing. And when you discover what they are, you'll never look at your snack bowl the same way again. For weeks, he avoided the snack bowl altogether. No peanuts, no cashews, no pistachios. Just empty evenings and restless nights filled with the echo of what-ifs. Had he damaged himself beyond repair? Was this just what getting older meant? Trading peace for pills, rest for routine checkups, and confidence for quiet worry? But then, something changed. In the middle of all that frustration, a whisper of truth began to surface. Not from a doctor's office, but from nature itself. Because the same world that gave us those 4 villains also gave us their antidotes. If the villains inflame, these heroes heal. They don't come in shiny packaging or marketing slogans. They come from soil, sunlight, and the silent brilliance of evolution. 4 simple gifts that have been quietly defending men's vitality for generations. And it all begins with the first one, the anti-inflammatory guardian, the walnut. It doesn't look like much, rough, wrinkled, shaped almost like the human brain itself. But inside, it hides something extraordinary. A perfect balance of omega-3 to omega-6 fats. Where the villain nuts ignite inflammation, walnuts put out the fire. The alpha-linolenic acid, ALA, in walnuts helps lower inflammatory markers like CRP while boosting circulation, allowing nutrients and oxygen to reach the prostate freely again. Think of it as a cool rain on smoldering embers. Slowly, gently, it restores calm. Men who add just a handful a day often notice more than better sleep. They report fewer bathroom trips, easier flow, and a quiet feeling of lightness where pressure once lived. It's not magic. It's balance, the kind nature designed before modern snacks got in the way, but that's just the first hero. Because while walnuts cool the fire, another nut rebuilds what age has been quietly taking away. The cellular rebuilder, the Brazil nut. This isn't just food, it's restoration. Each nut is loaded with selenium, a trace mineral that acts like armor for your cells. It helps detoxify the body, neutralize free radicals, and restore hormone function, especially testosterone balance. Selenium supports the liver, allowing it to clear excess estrogen-like compounds that tend to accumulate with age. And when that balance resets, the prostate finally gets the message. You can relax now. But here's the secret most men don't know. It doesn't take much. Just 1 or 2 Brazil nuts a day can flood your system with enough selenium to restore the body's natural defenses. It's the difference between fighting to survive and allowing the body to heal. Still, cleansing and balance are only part of the story. Because nature didn't stop there. The next hero does something even more profound. It helps your body communicate again. The hormone harmonizer, the almond. Clean, mild, ancient, the almond has nourished humans since the dawn of civilization. But what makes it a prostate ally is its deep connection to hormonal stability. Almonds are rich in zinc and magnesium, 2 minerals critical for testosterone production and regulation. Zinc helps block the conversion of testosterone into excess DHT, the same compound that drives prostate enlargement. Magnesium calms the nervous system, lowering stress hormones like cortisol that compete with testosterone for balance. Together, they turn chaos into rhythm. A handful of almonds a day can help the body restore harmony, not through artificial boosts or supplements, but by giving your cells the raw materials they've been quietly begging for. He didn't know it at first, but when he began snacking on raw almonds instead of salted cashews, the difference was undeniable. His nights grew calmer. His mornings, clearer. Still, one last imbalance remained: circulation. Because no matter how calm or balanced the body feels, without good blood flow, healing can't reach its destination, and that's where the final hero steps forward. The circulation catalyst, the hazelnut. Sweet, round, humble, and quietly powerful. Hazelnuts are packed with vitamin E, arginine, and antioxidants that open up blood vessels and reduce oxidative stress. That means better nutrient delivery, better hormonal signaling, and a stronger, steadier energy throughout the day. In men's health studies, vitamin E has been shown to protect prostate tissue from cellular damage, like a gentle shield that absorbs the hits before they reach your cells. And arginine? It's nature's nitric oxide booster. It relaxes blood vessels, supports healthy blood flow, and helps the body flush toxins from sensitive tissues. When blood flows freely, inflammation cools and healing can begin, not in theory, but in reality. It's what turns the late-night frustration into peaceful sleep again. He didn't find these nuts in a lab or a clinic. He found them in nature, simple, honest, and patient. And that's the real turning point. Not a pill, not a promise, but a partnership with the world that created him. Because when you replace the villains with these heroes, your body doesn't just recover, it remembers. It remembers balance, strength, and calm. For years, he thought aging meant surrender, that each trip to the bathroom was another step toward decline. But now, every handful of walnuts, almonds, Brazil nuts, or hazelnuts feels like a quiet rebellion, a reminder that nature still holds the blueprint for vitality. And it all comes down to one truth that most men never hear soon enough. Your body isn't broken. It's waiting for the right signal, the right fuel, the right care, because once you give it that, once you swap the fire for the healers, something remarkable begins to happen. The swelling calms. The nights grow peaceful. The man you used to be starts coming back. And just when you think you've seen it all, there's one fruit, hidden in plain sight, that completes the circle. A fruit so powerful, researchers call it the natural reset switch for prostate health. But that discovery is where everything changes. It began quietly. No dramatic miracle, no overnight cure, just small shifts that felt almost sacred. He slept longer. He woke up without that dull, dragging ache. The 3 a.m. wake-ups began to fade. What changed wasn't a pill or a supplement or some secret formula. It was something far simpler and infinitely more powerful. Nature's healing quartet. 4 nuts that didn't just soothe his body. They rewrote its rhythm. The anti-inflammatory warrior. The walnut, it started with the walnut. Rough, earthy, and underestimated. Inside that humble shell lives the perfect counterbalance to years of inflammation. The walnut's omega-3 fats fight what most modern diets ignite: swelling, stiffness, and oxidative stress that silently tighten their grip on the prostate. Science backs it. Omega-3s and polyphenols from walnuts reduce inflammatory markers like CRP, helping tissue calm, shrink, and breathe again. But beyond the science, there's a feeling. It's the quiet confidence that returns when a man wakes up rested, when the night belongs to him again, not to the endless cycle of interruptions. That's the walnut's gift. Not just less pain, but more peace. The blood flow booster, the hazelnut if walnuts cool the fire. Hazelnuts open the gates, packed with arginine, vitamin E, and healthy fats. Hazelnuts act like nature's vasodilators, helping blood vessels relax, oxygen flow freely, and nutrients finally reach the places that have been begging for them. Men often describe it the same way. My energy feels alive again. It's not imagination. That gentle surge of vitality is the result of nitric oxide production, your body's natural signal to restore circulation, reduce stress on the heart, and feed every cell. Where inflammation once trapped the body in tension, hazelnuts whisper the opposite message: flow again. And when blood flows, healing follows. The hormone balancer, the Brazil nut deep in the Amazon. Where the soil is rich and untouched, the Brazil nut grows, loaded with selenium, the mineral that guards your cells like a silent sentinel. One Brazil nut a day is enough to flood your system with antioxidants, supporting the liver, balancing testosterone, and lowering DHT, the hormone most tied to prostate swelling. But here's where it gets deeper. When selenium levels rise, the whole endocrine system stabilizes, cortisol drops, mood lifts, energy steadies. It's as if your body remembers its original settings, before stress, before age, before the noise. Men describe it as clarity returning, both in mind and body, and that balance ripples outward, from hormones to heart, from metabolism to mood. Because a balanced man doesn't just feel younger, he feels whole. The sleep restorer. The almond every night, as darkness settles, your body runs a silent repair sequence. But without magnesium, the mineral almonds deliver in abundance, that system can't run properly. Magnesium relaxes muscles, calms the nervous system, and signals the brain, it's safe to rest now. It's what stops those midnight wake-ups before they even begin. And while you sleep, your prostate finally gets its chance to recover. Blood flow increases, inflammation eases, and tissue softens. This is why men who snack on raw almonds before bed often notice something unexpected. Sleep that feels deeper. Rest that feels earned. Mornings that start without the groggy fog. Because magnesium isn't just about sleep, it's about renewal. It's what lets the body reset night after night. 4 nuts. 4 messengers of renewal. Each one with a unique mission: to cool, to flow, to balance, to restore. Together, they form the quiet symphony of healing that modern medicine too often forgets to mention. And as he stood in his kitchen one evening, handful of almonds in one palm, walnuts in the other, he realized something profound. Healing doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. It's the small, consistent choices that rewrite your story. One night, one meal, one heartbeat at a time. For him, that meant trading frustration for focus. Fear for faith, decline for discipline. But the question still lingers, echoing in every man's mind who's ever faced the same struggle. If 4 simple nuts could restore peace, what happens when you add the one fruit that can reset everything? The answer, hidden in plain sight, would soon rewrite everything he thought he knew about aging and strength. It began in sterile white labs, under flickering fluorescent lights, far from the farms and forests where nature quietly grows her cures. Men in lab coats leaned over test tubes, squinting at readings they couldn't quite believe. Because what they were seeing wasn't supposed to happen. For decades, medicine treated prostate swelling as inevitable, a slow, humiliating surrender to age. Part of being over 50, they'd say. Pills, surgeries, endless side effects. But then the data started whispering another story, and the whisper became a roar. The hidden power of nutrients. It started with a simple question. Could natural nutrients, the same ones found in 4 humble nuts, actually change the biology of the prostate? In 2019, researchers in Japan conducted a 12-week trial on men aged 55 to 70. Participants added just small daily portions of walnuts, almonds, and Brazil nuts to their diets. The results stunned them. Inflammatory markers, CRP, IL-6, and TNF-alpha, dropped by more than 25%. DHT, the hormone that fuels prostate enlargement, fell by nearly 18%. And most astonishing of all, MRI scans showed measurable reductions in prostate size. The scientists double-checked their work, triple-checked. Could nutrition really reshape tissue that had been swelling for years? The answer, it turned out, was yes. The Omega Connection Doctor. Marcus Levin, a nutritional endocrinologist, explained it simply. The body doesn't age because time passes. It ages because inflammation never stops. He described walnuts as a natural counterforce, loaded with alpha-linolenic acid, a plant-based omega-3 that signals your immune system to stand down. In men with chronic prostate inflammation, those immune cells stay in fight mode. They attack, they scar, they thicken tissue around the urethra, the very tube responsible for smooth flow. But omega-3s interrupt that pattern, telling the body, you're safe now. Within 4 weeks, many men report less pressure, a stronger stream, and better sleep. Not because of magic, but because the body finally stops fighting itself. A story from the Heartland. Meet Robert, 62, from Ohio. A retired carpenter, he'd spent years ignoring his nightly bathroom trips. Comes with the territory, he'd tell his wife. Until one day, fatigue hit him so hard he had to pull over while driving home. Too tired to trust his reflexes. That night, he decided something had to change. His doctor suggested medication, but Robert wanted to try something gentler first. So he made one small change, a handful of walnuts and almonds every evening before dinner. 30 days later, his story echoed the studies. His sleep improved. His urgency eased. His morning clarity returned. And when his physician ran follow-up labs, his inflammation markers had dropped dramatically. Robert wasn't an exception. He was a reflection of what happens when nature and science finally shake hands. Selenium and hormones. The Brazil nut effect in another corner of research. Attention turned to selenium, the trace mineral hidden inside the Brazil nut. At the University of Helsinki, scientists measured selenium's effect on testosterone and DHT balance in older men. What they found redefined hormonal aging. Men who consumed just 2 Brazil nuts daily for 3 months showed a % drop in DHT levels, a 15% rise in total testosterone, improved prostate comfort and energy levels. Dr. Helena Vardiainen summarized it perfectly. Selenium acts like the thermostat for your hormones. When it's missing, heat builds up in the wrong places. When it returns, balance follows. That balance isn't just biochemical, it's emotional. Men often describe clearer focus, better moods, and even restored confidence, the intangible markers of vitality that no prescription can quite duplicate. Circulation and the hazelnut discovery, while selenium balanced hormones, hazelnuts targeted the flow. European researchers discovered that arginine, an amino acid richly found in hazelnuts, acts as a precursor for nitric oxide, the body's natural vessel relaxer. In one study, men aged 50-65 who consumed 40 grams of hazelnuts daily showed a 16% improvement in blood flow efficiency within 3 weeks. Their urinary symptoms eased, but something deeper changed: their endurance, their stamina, their quiet sense of control. Doctors noted that as circulation improved, prostate tissue began receiving more oxygen, which reduced inflammation even further. It was a virtuous cycle: better flow, better healing, better life, magnesium's night shift, and then came the almond, humble, familiar, underestimated. Magnesium, the mineral that powers more than 300 enzymatic reactions, turned out to be the missing link between body repair and deep rest. When magnesium levels rise, cortisol, the stress hormone, declines. Muscles relax. The bladder calms. Sleep deepens. Dr. Patel from Stanford described it this way: without magnesium, the body stays in defense mode, even at night. That's why men wake up, not just because of their bladder, but because their nervous system never fully lets go. By replenishing magnesium through almonds, men often experience their first full night's rest in years. And it's not just sleep, it's repair time. While the mind dreams, the prostate finally heals. When science meets synergy, the breakthrough came when nutritionists decided to combine these four heroes, walnuts, hazelnuts, Brazil nuts, and almonds, into a balanced daily routine. They wanted to see if synergy mattered. Could the blend work better than any single nut alone? After 60 days, the results spoke for themselves. Men who followed the 4-nut protocol saw 31%. Reduction in nighttime urination frequency, 24%. Improvement in urinary flow rate, 40% increase in deep sleep cycles. And the most shocking discovery, prostate volume decreased by an average of 11% in just 8 weeks. It wasn't a miracle. It was biology, finally supported, not suppressed. The human element, each of these numbers represents something more than data. It's the sigh of relief when a man lies back in bed and stays asleep. It's the confidence of walking past a restroom without anxiety. It's the quiet gratitude that comes from knowing, maybe you're not broken after all. Science has always searched for complex answers. But sometimes the body only needed simple nourishment, delivered with consistency, patience, and respect. The cliffhanger. What happens when you go further? But here's where the story turns again. Researchers began asking, if these nuts could calm inflammation, improve flow, and rebalance hormones individually, what would happen if they were paired with specific fruits and antioxidants that amplify their effects? The early tests were astonishing. Prostate relief doubled, energy tripled, sleep became effortless, and the most curious finding of all? A single fruit, common, accessible, but almost forgotten, seemed to unlock the full potential of every nutrient in the mix. That discovery would go on to challenge everything we thought we knew about male health and aging. And for millions of men searching for real hope, it might just be the turning point they've been waiting for. It started small, like most revolutions do. A single comment on a health forum. A few men swapping late-night stories. One headline that read, "The 4-nut switch that's changing men's sleep." At first, no one believed it. But then came the screenshots, the testimonials, the grainy before and after pictures of men who looked, somehow, awake again. Within weeks, it wasn't just a conversation. It was a movement. The first wave. The forums ignite. In a quiet corner of an online men's health group, a user named Midnight Fix posted something simple. Been eating walnuts, almonds, hazelnuts, and Brazil nuts every day for a month. No pills, just real food. I'm finally sleeping through the night again. Replies flooded in. Some were skeptical. Others hopeful. But most were curious. By day 2, his post had over 2,000 reactions. By the end of the week, it hit 20,000 views. Men from across the country, veterans, teachers, truckers, retirees, chimed in with their own experiments. One wrote, "I used to plan my road trips around rest stops. Not anymore." Another, "My wife thinks I'm lying. She can't believe I haven't gotten up once this week." What started as an experiment became a collective awakening. The 4-nut switch challenge was born. The second wave, the doctors react. When family physicians began hearing about the sudden trend, curiosity turned to cautious intrigue. Dr. Sarah Connors, a urologist from Denver, admitted in an interview, "I was skeptical, but when several of my patients showed actual improvements, fewer nighttime trips, lower PSA levels, I had to look deeper." She ran her own small observational test with 15 volunteers over 2 months. Every single participant reported better sleep and comfort. "Sometimes," she said, smiling, "it's not about fighting the body. It's about feeding it what it's been missing." Soon, medical YouTubers joined in. Clips titled, "Do Nuts Really Heal the Prostate?" And doctors surprised by 4-nut study results gained millions of views. Audiences weren't just watching, they were participating. The third wave, the viral stories as the hashtag #4nut challenge trended, something unexpected happened. It wasn't just men talking about it anymore. It was their partners. Wives began sharing their side of the story. "He's finally sleeping through the night, which means I'm finally sleeping too. We both feel like we're 20 years younger." Health podcasts picked it up. Morning radio hosts joked, "Men are going nuts for nuts." But behind the humor, there was truth. This wasn't a fad built on fantasy. It was grounded in real, visible change. Social media lit up with transformation videos. Men holding handfuls of mixed nuts like trophies. Grandfathers laughing beside their grandkids saying, "They told me to slow down. Guess I didn't." A retired firefighter posting, "It's not about the nuts. It's about getting my life back." The ripple spread soon. Supermarkets noticed a spike in nut sales. One small organic brand in Oregon reported a 400% jump in mixed nut orders labeled 4-nut blend. Nutritionists began creating easy daily guides, a handful of walnuts for breakfast, a sprinkle of almonds in yogurt, a Brazil nut at lunch, a few hazelnuts before bed. The beauty of it all? Simplicity. No subscriptions, no expensive pills, just a lifestyle that felt real and people felt connected, part of something larger. A movement not built on fear of aging, but faith in renewal. The fourth wave, the emotional aftermath. Somewhere in Florida, a 68-year-old man named Raymond sent an email to his local newspaper. It read, "I don't know if this is newsworthy, but I haven't slept like this since 1998. My doctor said my prostate looks calmer than it has in years. I just want other guys to know you don't have to give up." His letter was published in a Sunday column, titled "A Handful of Hope." It was shared over 100,000 times. Men began calling radio stations, sending in thank you notes, creating support groups. And through it all, one theme kept echoing: belonging. They weren't alone anymore. Not in their frustration, not in their fight, not in their healing. It became less about the nuts and more about the message that aging doesn't have to mean surrender. The quiet humor of healing. There was laughter too, the kind that comes when pain finally loosens its grip. One man joked, "My wife's buying the nuts in bulk. Says it's cheaper than my old meds." Another replied, "Mine says she's sleeping better than I am." Communities formed, not around disease, but around progress. Because every time a man posted his success story, it gave 10 others permission to try. And beneath the jokes and viral videos was something sacred, a reminder that healing isn't just physical, it's emotional. It's shared. The cliffhanger. The fruit awakening, but as the challenge spread, one question kept surfacing, whispered in comments, debated on podcasts, teased in video titles. What about that fruit everyone's talking about? Reports began hinting at a new discovery, a fruit that didn't just complement the 4 nuts, but amplified their effects beyond what science expected. Doctors called it a metabolic switch. Nutritionists called it the missing key. And men across the world began asking the same question. If 4 nuts could change their nights, what could happen when you combine them with this one powerful fruit? The next chapter, the fruit awakening, would change everything they thought they knew about aging, strength, and the power of nature itself. The room is quiet now. No flickering alarm clock. No rustling sheets. No shuffling footsteps in the dark. Just steady breathing. Slow, deep, peaceful. He doesn't remember the last time he slept through the night like this. Maybe decades ago, when the world still felt simple. Before the fatigue. Before the restless tossing. Before those endless trips down the hallway at 3 a.m. Now, at 57, he wakes up not to frustration, but to sunlight. The first morning rays spill across his face, and for a moment, he simply lies there, feeling what peace actually sounds like. The silence of a rested mind. He sits up, stretches his arms, and smiles faintly. No pressure. No urgency. Just calm. The same man who once dreaded bedtime now looks forward to it. Because somewhere along this journey, through confusion, frustration, and small steady changes, he found something he'd been missing all along. Trust in his own body. No pills. No surgery. No expensive miracle bottles from late-night commercials. Just knowledge and nature, a handful of nuts. A few mindful habits, a simple understanding that the body isn't an enemy to fight. It's a friend waiting to be heard. It took him time to realize it wasn't aging that was stealing his sleep. It was imbalance. Years of stress, poor nutrition, dehydration, and overlooked signals. His body wasn't breaking down. It was crying out for balance, for relief, for simplicity, and once he listened, everything began to shift. He felt lighter, not just in body, but in spirit. His mornings no longer started with exhaustion, but with gratitude. He noticed how small things changed. He laughed more easily. His concentration returned. Even his posture felt stronger, not forced but natural, because healing, he learned, doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, in the stillness of night, in the quiet strength of routine, in the slow rebuilding of confidence. He steps into the kitchen, the scent of coffee mingling with the warm glow of morning. On the counter, a small glass jar, filled with his healing quartet. Walnuts, almonds, Brazil nuts, hazelnuts, 4 simple allies that gave him back his nights. He pours a small handful into his palm, smiles and says softly, "Who knew?" For years he believed his body was betraying him. Now he knows it was protecting him the only way it knew how, by signaling distress. It just needed him to listen. Across the country, thousands of men are doing the same, sitting at their breakfast tables, feeling that same quiet relief, that same sense of possibility. And in their eyes, you see the same truth reflected back. Your body isn't broken. It's just waiting for balance. Maybe healing doesn't start in a lab. Maybe it starts in awareness, in one brave moment where you decide to understand, not ignore. Where you stop masking symptoms and start restoring harmony. Because the body is wiser than we think. It remembers how to heal. All it needs is the right rhythm, the right nourishment, and a little faith. So tonight, when he lies down, there's no fear, no calculation of how many hours he'll manage before waking. There's only calm. His wife breathes softly beside him. Outside, the world sleeps. But this time, he's part of it. He closes his eyes knowing he's not chasing rest anymore. He's living it. And as the night folds around him, one truth settles quietly in his mind. A truth every man deserves to hear. Healing isn't about turning back time. It's about reclaiming peace. One night, one breath, one choice at a time. Now that you know the truth, the 4 nuts that harm, and the 4 that heal, the question becomes simple, but powerful. Which side will you choose? The choice isn't just about snacks. It's about reclaiming control over your nights, your mornings, your confidence. Because when you feed your body the right way, it responds with strength, clarity, and calm. Think back to where we began. Sleepless nights, quiet frustration, endless searching for answers. Now you hold the map. Nature's balance is no longer a mystery. It's within reach, waiting for you to take the first step. If this story resonated with you, if you felt that spark of hope, that reminder that healing is possible, Then join the journey. Subscribe to Alpha Vitality, where every story brings you closer to understanding how the body heals, thrives, and restores itself naturally. Here, we don't chase trends. We chase truth. Because real wellness isn't built on hype. It's built on awareness, consistency, and trust in the intelligence of nature. So choose your side, the side of renewal, strength, and peaceful sleep. And remember, the smallest daily choices often lead to the biggest transformations. Your journey doesn't end here. It begins with one decision: to believe in your body's ability to heal. Alpha Vitality, where knowledge becomes power, and power becomes peace.